Oh my goodness. How's it going? So, Joe Biden. It's over, guys. He has COVID. It's over. So there's going to be a press conference here. I wasn't really going to cover this at all, let alone cover it live, but I'm feeling kind of lazy today. I'm just going to be honest. I don't want to, I don't have the patience to do a proper story today. So we're going to just chat for a bit. And this is a good enough reason to chat. Biden has COVID, which kind of weird that it took this long, considering that he's around a lot of people a lot of times. At least that's the assumption, is he's, meeting people every day. So it's weird that it took this long for him to finally get it. But I will, once this live stream starts, we will watch it. But in the meantime, I'll have this in the background so I know when it goes live. But let's go over some of the news, some of the jaw-dropping news that Joe Biden has COVID. Oh my God. VP Kamala Harris getting her best suit on, getting ready to take over. And likely would be even worse than Joe Biden is. Though I have to say, before we get to some reactions here on the internet and the statement and the live stream, what do you think would happen? Or maybe we should save this part of the discussion until after I get to the rest of the stuff. But we're going to discuss, let me just tease it out. We're going to discuss if you think Kamala Harris, if she were forced to take over, if the worst happened and she became president, would she be better or worse than Biden? So collect your thoughts, think about it for a bit. We'll get to that conversation. Because I could go either way, and I'll explain. But before we get there, let's go over the announcement. And again, if you're coming to this late, they're going to do a live stream at the White House taking questions. So I will cover that live once they start that up. But while we're waiting for this, let's go over the news. So again, President Biden has COVID. Hello, Will. What's up? Hi, everybody. And of course, I'll take your questions and stuff as you send them. But let's, so some of you saying worse. We'll get to the discussion about if Kamala would be better or worse than Biden. But here is the statement. So President Biden is fully vaccinated, twice boosted. So that's 4 vaccinations, and experiencing mild symptoms following a positive COVID-19 test. Read a letter from Dr. Kevin O'Connor. So the doctor says this morning, part of a routine screening program for the president, the COVID virus was detected by antigen testing. The result was subsequently confirmed via the PCR test. And then on questioning, President Biden is currently experiencing mild symptoms, mostly a runny nose and fatigue, with an occasional dry cough, which started yesterday evening. Given that he meets U.S. Food and Drug Administration emergency use authorization criteria for Paxlovid, I have recommended initiating such treatment. The president is fully vaccinated and twice boosted, so I anticipate that he will respond favorably, as most maximally protected patients do. Early use of Paxlovid, is that how you say it? Paxlovid? In this case, provides additional protection against severe disease. He will isolate in accordance with Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recommendations. I will keep her office updated with any changes in his condition or treatment plan. So let me just say straight up, I think he's going to be fine. Largely because he's, vaccinated, of course, has 2 boosters, and because Trump was fine. So they'll do whatever they can for the most powerful people to ensure they are fine. Trump, when he got COVID, wasn't even vaccinated. He was actually really sick apparently at the time, but they still threw everything at him, and they were able to, help him to defeat it even while he was unvaccinated. So Biden, as somebody who is fully vaccinated and 2 boosters, and on top of that has all the help in the world, I think he'll be fine. But let's do the Jordan Peterson but maybe he won't be. And in that case, we will discuss what would happen if Kamala Harris took over. But he'll be fine. But let's get to some reactions online. And again, if you're coming late, because I know people are streaming in and out, the White House will begin shortly with their live stream. So we will cover that, or I will show that live. And, if it's boring, I'll talk over it. So, but here's an update from Biden. What did he say? Hold up, Joe. Chill out, Joe.
Hey, folks, guess you heard this morning I tested positive for COVID. But I've been double vaccinated, double boosted. Symptoms are mild, and I really appreciate your inquiries and your concerns. But I'm doing well. I'm getting a lot of work done. I'm going to continue to get it done. And in the meantime, thanks for your concern, and keep the faith. It's going to be okay.
I don't know. No, I think he's fine. But still, the White House doing a press briefing. All right, I'll take it. So this was earlier before the video saying, folks, I'm doing great. Thanks for your concern. Just called Senator Casey, Congressman Cartwright, and Mayor Cognetti, and my Scranton cousins to send my regrets for missing our event today. Keeping busy. Here he is with his 2 phones, pen in hand, papers in front of him, water bottle half drank. I'm not sure what that means, but there you go. There's a half drunken water bottle, and a little picture here. All right, that's about it there. Some reactions. Here's Fox News. Who's this dude? No idea. Some weird looking guy.
Experiences. I don't want any bad health on him. I think life comes at you fast. I think when you're pretending to have cancer one day and you've got COVID the next, you might want to recalibrate how you treat.
Did Biden pretend to have cancer? Okay. I think I heard something about him like saying the word cancer by accident. I don't know what that's about. Maybe another clip covers that, but I don't think that really counts as pretending to have cancer. But okay.
Things and how you talk, but I'm not going to, I don't wish bad luck on him, and I'm not going to say that's the reason why. It's just maybe it's a good opportunity for him to have a reality check. I get so frustrated with these politicians that think they have to connect themselves to every dire thing that happens in an American's life. And I think President Biden, his little statement on cancer yesterday just is proof of that politicians have taken that too far. So what I hope is he recovers fast. It doesn't hurt him that much at all. And then when he recovers, he reconsiders, just how politicians work on stuff like this. Because saying he had cancer the way he did and backtracking it the way they did, that's karma, man. You don't want to fool with that.
Did he really say he had cancer? Or are they just making this? Okay. Now I have to look this up. I feel like this would have been bigger news if he was like, I have cancer, and then he didn't have cancer. What is going on? Okay. Let me check Newsweek. What did Newsweek say about this cancer? All right. President suggests that pollution was to blame for skin cancer that he would later experience, saying that Delaware used to have the highest cancer rate in the nation. Did he have skin cancer? Sorry, I'm just scanning for the word cancer here. He said the pollution was the reason that he and others had experienced cancer. Guess what? The first frost, you know what was happening, said Biden. You'd have to put on your windshield wipers to get literally the oil slick off the window. That's why and he's such an old, back in my day, you had to, you had to put your windshield wipers to get literally the oil slick off the window. That's why I and so many other people I grew up have cancer. And why for the longest time Delaware had the highest rate of cancer in the nation. Although it's not clear whether an oil slick on the outside of a car windshield would play any direct role. Studies have shown that air pollution can increase the risk of developing skin cancer. Well, yes. However, skin cancer is believed to be more commonly caused by overexposure to the sun. Biden was diagnosed with multiple localized non-melanoma skin cancers that were surgically removed before he became president. The report suggested that the cancer may have been caused by Biden spending a good deal of time in the sun in his youth. Remember that story about him having hairy legs? Turned blonde in the sun. That's so yeah, he was like a lifeguard back in the day, right? So I guess he had some localized skin cancer. Melanoma has the highest mortality rate of all skin cancers, although it only accounts for 1% of all cases. Common types, okay, I don't. That's not really important. So I guess he did kind of have cancer. It's not, I guess it wasn't serious, but he had localized skin cancers. Anyways, he has COVID. So back to that topic. I think this guy was done. He was pretty boring. I fell asleep halfway through this.
You don't want to put into the universe something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a really odd communications moment yesterday. Cassie, you've spent your career.
All right. Boring. This is on Newsmax. I believe this lady is a congressperson.
So again, speedy recovery. We wish him the best, but I think it's time that we really refocus on some of the issues that we have here at home and in our backyards before we go down the path of another double booster and, vaccines for kids under 5 and whatnot.
Yeah.
So again, speedy recovery.
Okay. That was too short to even really have an opinion. Here is Newsmax's Mark Halperin. Remember Mark Halperin? Used to be on Morning Joe, and then he got Me Too'd. Now he's on Newsmax.
He had domestic travel. He also had international travel. He recently got back from Israel and Saudi Arabia. He's met with several officials on these fronts. As we know that it takes about the incubation period for COVID, according to doctors, about 3 to 5 days out. Obviously, we're here. He's popping up positive tests here on a Thursday. But at some point, it may put him in the window of that. Recently meeting with these heads of state, is there some point you would feel that the White House may contact the heads of Saudi Arabia, Israel, etc., to see if anyone else is experiencing symptoms as well?
I'd be surprised, Sean, if that hasn't already happened. And again, it's a matter of history as well as science to know who infected the president of the United States. And I'll say again, a lot of Americans are traveling. I think probably it's true of me. I don't know if it's true of the two of you. When I travel now, I remarked the other day I was leaving the house. Didn't even occur to me to take a mask with me. even though there is obviously a resurgence of the disease. The parts of the world he was in are currently seeing some sort of resurgence. And so it's going to be interesting to see what those other governments say. And I'll say again, even though a lot of people who watch this network are not pro-mask, why didn't the president wear a mask on this trip? Why did he shake hands with so many foreign officials? His choice, like a lot of the choice of a lot of Americans, but now he's dealing.
You can't, if you're going to be a network that makes fun of people for wearing masks and talks down about the importance of trying to prevent yourself from getting COVID, you then can't also bring up criticisms of him and things that he should have done to be safer about COVID. Like, you can't have it both ways. Either you are going to be honest about what scientists are saying, what the vast majority of health professionals are recommending. And yes, that can change as well, depending on, the situation with COVID. But either you're going to follow the guidelines and discuss that, and maybe on the side discuss your own opinions, but discuss, what the experts are saying. Either you're going to do that, or you're going to be pure propaganda, as Newsmax is. So you can't. It's the same thing like with the gas prices. They criticized him when the gas prices went up, and you can't put a little blame, because yes, he should be using a little more of his authority on these. It's about to start on these fossil fuel giants, but it's not really his fault.
As
and then you
all
can't
know,
then
I
not
received a letter
credit him when it goes
from the
down.
President's personal physician this morning. We released it to you shortly thereafter in the interest of transparency. I have the letter here, and I just want to read it through so we can get started, before we get started. This morning, as part of our routine screening program for the President, the SARS-CoV-2 virus was detected by antigen testing. This result was subsequently confirmed by a PCR test. On questioning, President Biden is currently experiencing mild symptoms, mostly a runny nose and fatigue, with an occasional dry cough, which started yesterday evening. Given that he meets USA Food and Drug Administration, FDA, Emergency Use Authority criteria for Paxlovid, I have recommended initiating such treatment. The President is fully vaccinated and twice boosted, so I anticipate that he will respond favorably, as most maximally protected patients do. Early use of Paxlovid in this case provides additional protection against severe disease. He will isolate in accordance with CDC recommendations. I will keep your office updated with any changes in his condition or treatment plan. I also wanted to provide you with a brief readout of the President's activities today. The President has been working from the residence, like so many of us have during this pandemic, doing calls with senior staff, including the Chief of Staff, myself, and Dr. Jha, who's here with us. As we read out, the President also called Senator Casey, Representative Cartwright, mayors of Scranton, Mayor of Wilkesboro, and Representative Clyburn. The President also called a few of his cousins from Scranton who were set to attend today's event in Pennsylvania. And he spoke with Ambassador Giddenstein and Cornyn. You all have seen the photo he posted on and the video that was just released to all of you out of transparency moments ago. The President will continue to work from the residence. Today, as you all know, as I just mentioned, and as we sent out earlier, Dr. Ashish Jha, our COVID-19 response coordinator, is joining us today in the briefing room. And as I tweeted out earlier, Dr. Jha and I spoke to the President this morning, and he said he's feeling fine. He has a little dry cough, as I just mentioned from the doctor's letter, a little runny nose. He's feeling tired, but he's working very hard on behalf of the American people. And with that, Dr. Jha.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm pleased to be with you. As Corinne mentioned, I spoke to the President earlier. I also spoke at length with Dr. O'Connor, who is the President's personal physician. And I'm happy to share the readout of these conversations with you, and then I'm happy to take questions. In terms of my conversation with the President, he sounded great. I asked him, Mr. President, how are you feeling? He said, "I'm feeling fine." He said he was feeling fine. He had been working all morning. He hadn't even been able to finish his breakfast because he had just been busy. I encouraged him to finish his breakfast. In terms of my conversation with Dr. O'Connor, we talked at length about what happened this morning. As Corinne mentioned, the president got his regular testing that he does on his regular cadence. After he tested positive, he reported these symptoms that have been described. Dr. O'Connor examined him thoroughly. He found his exam to be normal, to be at his baseline. And then obviously he recommended that the president take Paxlovid. The president accepted that recommendation and has started Paxlovid and has taken his first course already. I want to also just take a minute to sort of mark this moment. Because the president is fully vaccinated, double boosted, his risk of serious illness is dramatically lower.
I'll get to your super chat, by
He's
the way.
also getting treated with a very powerful antiviral, and that further reduces his risk of serious illness. And it's a reminder of the reason that we all work so hard to make sure that every American has the same level of protection that the president has, that every American has the same level of immunity, and why we have worked so hard to make sure that people have access to life-saving treatments like Paxlovid. These are incredibly important things for the president to have. They're incredibly important things for every American to have. And we have worked very hard over the last 18 months to make sure we have plenty of vaccines, that we have plenty of therapies, that people can get tested on a regular basis, as the president does, because testing allows you to identify an infection early and get started with treatment early. And we all know from medicine that early treatment is always better. Let me also take a moment to talk about BA.5. If you've listened to me at all in the last couple of weeks, you heard me talk a lot about this subvariant of Omicron that is now 70–80% of all infections in the United States. It's a reminder to everyone, if you are over 50, the way I am, the way many of you might be, if you are over the age of 50 and if you've not gotten a vaccine shot in the year 2022, you need to go get one. You need to go get one now, because it will dramatically improve your level of protection, reduce your risk of having serious illness. It's the best thing that people can be doing. Let me just finish by saying, obviously we work hard to protect the president, make sure he's been vaccinated and boosted, has access to treatments. We also have been working very, very hard to make sure every American has access to the same things. Because every American deserves access to the best vaccines, the best
Someone
treatments,
says COVID and
they
cancer?
are widely available. And I want to use this moment to remind everybody of that and to remind everybody to avail themselves of that. Get vaccinated. If you have a breakthrough infection, get treated. It's the best thing you can do to protect yourself. Let me stop and take questions, and I know you will as well.
We'll both take questions, but go ahead, Nancy.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jha. Has the president been tested to determine which variant he has? Is it BA.5? And if so, what does that say about his prognosis?
It's a great question. The virus has been sent off for sequencing. It takes usually about a week for that sequencing to come back. That's under normal circumstances. He's the president. The sequencing will get prioritized. So we should have an answer sooner than that. But you can't just tell from a regular test what kind of variant. So the sequencing results will be back at some point less than a week from now.
And has the president had to halt any of his regular medications now that he's taking Paxlovid? And what are you doing to mitigate the risk from halting those medications?
Yeah, so I had a conversation about this with Dr. O'Connor. There are two medicines he's on, Eliquis and Crestor, cholesterol-lowering medicine, and a blood thinner for his atrial fibrillation, both of which need to be stopped when you take Paxlovid. It's a very standard, common thing that we do when we give people Paxlovid. And you don't need to do anything in those circumstances. They both get stopped for the 5 days that he's on Paxlovid, and then they get restarted, and it's totally fine and pretty normal practice.
Go ahead.
Where exactly was the president infected?
Where was he infected? I don't think we know. I certainly don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Look, I don't think that matters, right? I think what matters is we prepared for this moment. I think what matters is what Dr. Jha just laid out.
Whoa. That means she definitely knows where he got it and who he got it from. To say it doesn't matter, They would just say, we don't know.
Vaccinated. And so now today, look to today, more and more people are getting closer to having a more normal life. Vaccines are available. And as Dr. Jha said, if you have not gotten vaccinated, please do. If you have not, if you have not gotten boosted.
Look, it doesn't really matter where he got it from, but I don't know why they wouldn't just tell us. I guess there's a reason, but now I want to know even more. Who gave it to him? Because clearly somebody gave it to him. So I'll get to super chats and some other stuff here, and Biden saying his cancer in a second. I got the video because I did not see this before. And then we'll talk about if Kamala would be worse or better than Biden if she had to take over. But let's see whatever's left at this press conference, if it's even worth listening.
If you look at Twitter, it feels like everybody has rebound. But it turns out there's actually clinical data. If you look at major health systems that have given out Paxlovid to tens of thousands of people, rebound rates are around 5%. There are some studies that says maybe 7-8%, some that say it's 2%, but it's in the single digits. So it happens, it's not that frequent. But here's the key point about rebound, which is when people have rebound, they don't end up in the hospital, they don't end up particularly sick. And the goal of Paxlovid is to keep people from getting seriously ill. And so it continues to work. His physician is in charge of taking care of him. Obviously, the president will continue to be monitored as he is, but the Paxlovid is working really well at preventing serious illness, rebound or no rebound, and that's why he was offered it, and that's why the president took it.
And you mentioned the symptoms that the president has had so far: runny nose, fatigue, dry cough. What other symptoms are you looking out for at this point? Obviously, this is the beginning of this, and what would warrant hospitalization?
So right now he feels really well. Our expectation is that he's going to continue to have mild illness, and he's going to be monitored for symptoms. I mean, you ask him, kind of every day. I asked him, like, how is he feeling? Is he having any other symptoms? He's not. I think we're going to continue monitoring that, and I don't like. I think that is the plan right now. Is that he's going to get care the way he would. I was going to say the way he would any other person. He's the president, so obviously he gets extra attention, but. I don't think we have any expectations of any other symptoms at this.
Someone said, "What is it?" Or how would they know where he got it from? I would agree with you, except for the fact that the press secretary just said that doesn't matter. So she would have said, "We don't know where he got it," if they didn't know. But clearly, they have a bit of an idea if they're avoiding the question. So, which brings up a few people mentioned MBS or the Saudis. That would make sense. I mean, that would be maybe the only reason why they wouldn't mention it, is because they don't want to, damage their relationship there with, after Biden just arrived there, which I wouldn't care about, but clearly they would care about. So that could make sense for why they wouldn't talk about it. Is it worth watching the rest of this, or should we move on? Let's just see where this goes, if it goes anywhere. Oops, wrong button.
Conducting right now a contact tracing, and they are contacting every single person who meets the CDC definition of a potentially close contact.
Speaking of the CDC, this last question. The CDC says if you are in a high-risk area, and a large swath of the nation is in a high-risk area, they recommend wearing masks indoors. In this White House, we're still seeing people back and forth. DC is is in that high category. Is there now a push to tell people to start wearing the masks indoors, especially as the president now we see has COVID?
I actually, off the top of my head, can't remember where DC is on the orange, yellow, green map. So I'm not going to kind of do this off. But the bottom line is we follow CDC guidelines, and the policy at the White House is to follow CDC guidelines in terms of mask wearing based on CDC's COVID community levels.
Good, Ashley.
Thank you. Will the president resume public events in 5 days if he tests negative, or will the White House be more cautious and have him isolate for 10 days?
So the plan right now is to follow. It's actually, we do CDC guidelines, but we actually go beyond CDC guidelines. So he's certainly going to isolate for at least 5 days, and he will return to normal activities after he's had a negative test.
Okay. I'll leave this up for a few seconds. You can read the transcript if you really care. Let me answer some super chats, and then we'll get to the other stuff here I had prepared, and then we will move on. I just feel like, what else are we going to learn here? I don't really know. So, Bavaria says, did you see the Rising on the Hill segment regarding Rogan / Communist Canada? It quickly transformed into an anti-trans rant, plus more. It was crazy as F. I did not see their segment on this. Who was on the segment? Should we watch it? Maybe we should watch it. Depending how long it is. You know, I'm not going to sit through a 20-minute segment, but it'd be something to discuss. As I look for it, let me just hit the audio here.
And he is going to continue to do his work, as we've seen from the video. Ashley, I'm going to take your question right now. Look, in the video that you saw, there was his videographer was there with him, wore an N95 mask, had the appropriate distance, the 6 feet distance, in the same situation as well with the photo. And as you saw in the video, he was outside, so we did that outside. And with the photo, he took off his mask so that the American people could see him and see directly, see the work that he's doing and that he's sitting at his desk continuing to do his work. But just wanted to give that. Go ahead, Dr. John. I don't know if there's any. Go ahead.
Can I ask whether there was any consideration given to other treatments other than Paxlovid, such as the monoclonal?
Okay, this is really boring. Let me, before we watch this segment here, let's close the loop on this Biden stuff. So, wait, was there another chat? Oh yeah. Well, here's the thing. We're gonna watch this. I'm gonna save it. I want to finish this discussion on Biden and get to whether Kamala Harris would be better or worse, and then we'll get here. But this is so. I brought this up earlier because some conservative mentioned this, that Biden said he had cancer yesterday. I hadn't seen this clip. Let's watch it now. I don't know what the hell this is about.
Accessible, and because it was a 4-lane highway that was accessible, my mother drove us, and rather than us be able to walk.
What? Okay. Enough pop-ups on these websites, please. please spare me the pop-ups.
And guess what? The first frost, you know what was happening? It had to put on their windshield wipers to get literally the oil slick off the window. That's why I and so damn many other people I grew up have cancer. And why can't, for the longest time, Delaware had the highest cancer rate in the nation.
So I guess he said have instead of had?
And why can't other people I grew up have cancer? And why can't, for the longest time, Delaware had the highest cancer rate in the nation.
This is what... This is what generated this round of headlines from largely conservative outlets. Biden just saying have when he meant to say had. Okay. Not really a big deal. Like, to call that a gaffe. Biden has real gaffes. That's barely a gaffe. He just said have instead of saying had. Not really a big deal. This is unrelated, but here, worth noting here. This past week, 209 House Republicans voted against abortion rights, 205 against protecting interstate travel for reproductive care, 195 against protecting contraception access, and 157 against marriage equality. Just to give you an idea of how insane these Republican lawmakers are right now. That gives you a good idea. So that was a statement. I showed you the video. Biden keeping busy. We talked about the skin cancer. This clip was dumb. Mark Halperin, who cares? What's this? CNN didn't really say much. Jill Biden's reaction. Unless we have to sit through an ad. In which case, I say no.
We have some sound in from Dr. Jill Biden, the First Lady, who we showed you just moments ago, continuing because she tested negative her travels today in Detroit. She was in a classroom and she just addressed this news about the president contracting COVID-19. Let's listen to her.
My husband tested positive for COVID. I talked to him just a few minutes ago. He's doing fine. He's feeling good. I tested negative this morning. I am going to keep my schedule. I am, according to CDC guidelines, I am keeping masks. And so I'd like to go in and see the program here. Learning loss as an educator means a lot to me. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you for coming over to town.
Thank you.
How are you doing? You must be terribly concerned.
Fine. Thank you.
All right, she's fine. Giant Cosmic Snail says his windshield had cancer and his mother walked through oil slick to school. People are funny. Danny, why would I let the ad run? This is Mediaites ad, not my ad. I'm not going to let Mediaites ad run on my page. So that's whatever. This is another reaction from Fox News. Let's see what this is about. Oh my God. Let's see if it's worth it. I wouldn't be so rosy. He is at risk. Trump COVID czar disagrees with doctor on Fox News about Biden's survival chances. So they're getting all giddy about the idea.
Dr. McCary is suggesting that everything's going to be okay in the end. He's getting the right treatment. How do you view this in the early stages, sir?
I think we need to be quite careful because the president is at advanced age. He also has underlying health conditions, including atrial fibrillation. He's had previous aneurysms and strokes. So I would be cautious. I wouldn't be so rosy, potentially as Dr. McCary, that everything's going to be fine. He is at risk. The other issue I would say is that Paxlovid is obviously a very good drug, but it has drug-drug interactions with many of the drugs I believe the president is on, including blood thinners or anticoagulants, and it could cause dangerous changes in that. So I'm sure the White House medical unit is on this and is monitoring that, but that is one issue with Paxlovid in addition to the rebound that I would watch for with the president.
And as they mentioned in that press conference, Biden has to be off of his other medication for 5 days, including that blood thinner, as he is taking that Paxlovid. So there you go. Again, I think he'll be fine, as I said at the beginning of this video, because Trump was fine without a vaccine, and that's because this is the president. They throw whatever they can at him. But of course, yes, Biden is older. That does set him or put him at a higher risk than the average person. Fox News doc praises vaccines, says Biden's COVID may have caused I have cancer gaffe. Okay. Let's sit through another ad, a black screen ad. Because I feel like, no, my ad block is off, so I'm not sure what's going on here. But at some point, the video will load. As it's loading, let me see if I can answer a question from Ryan.
Doctor at Fox News, Dr. Mark Siegel, and Doc, good morning to you. Our first chance to get reaction from you.
3 minutes. No, we're going to speed through this.
Mild symptoms, put all this together.
Bill, you know, Sandra, the first thing I want to do is contrast this from when President Trump had this in October 2020, and I interviewed him, and he ended up with pneumonia in the hospital. He got monoclonal antibodies. He got the big cocktail, remdesivir. This is an enormous difference,
he got the big
isn't it?
cocktail.
And the way this should be messaged from the White House is, look, he had 2 vaccines. He had 2 boosters. You know, we have Paxlovid, which, as you mentioned, he's getting. His symptoms are mild congestion. So even at his age, 79 and a half years old, the chances are he's going to do very well. That shows you how far we have come. And he has underlying medical conditions, as you know. He has heart disease, atrial fibrillation, which is an arrhythmia. He's got to be very carefully watched here because of his age, because of his underlying heart disease. But we have tools now that we can use that we didn't have before, and they work.
Dr. Siegel, if you could stand by with us, we're going to head back to the White House where Mark Meredith is standing by. And Mark,
when the White House announced the trip to the Middle East and this whole fist bump idea came out, they were mocked by a lot of people, thinking, what's that all about? I mean, you as a medical physician, does a fist bump prevent contact now? Or
no,
just breathing air could even bring the virus into your body still.
It's
no,
airborne.
Actually, I want to go
It's
over
not
that
a fist
because Brett made a really good point. You've been actually saying that the president's wife, Jill Biden, hasn't come down with it. I want you to know that even within a household, only about 1 out of 3 people get it who are actually exposed to it. So with all the exposure that he's had the last few days, everybody needs to be tested. And for sure, some of them could get it. But it may very well be that they don't, because it's only, again, 1 out of 3. And Bill, the fist bump is not going to prevent spread at all. I think that in close quarters inside, a high-quality mask helps. And I think that obviously not exposing people by not going out and getting frequent testing helps. So those are key issues. Another point I want to comment on that Brett just made that I was thinking too was yesterday when he had all that confusion about cancer and that garbled speech, it's very well likely, looking back on that he was already suffering from COVID. And COVID causes brain fog, and it causes a certain amount of confusion. And that may take a while to clear. So
Okay, come on. This is almost Fox News defending Joe Biden because this is not the first time he's fumbled his words or had brain fog in a speech. So to blame COVID for that is an interesting comment to make on Fox News. But there you go. I guess there's 30 seconds left. Let's just see what else is here.
I would be monitoring this to look for fatigue, for fever, for problems concentrating, for respiratory congestion, upper respiratory, and sore throat are most common. And one more thing, with this subvariant, we're not seeing the same symptoms that we saw previously, and that's good news because it tends to affect the upper respiratory, not deep into the lungs. So even at his age, with Paxlovid, and there's a monoclonal antibody available that works against it, he may get that. All of those tools help.
Okay, there you go. Fox saying masks are good, which depending on the show, that isn't new for Fox News. It's just some of their primetime garbage, of course, downplayed COVID for, I guess, years at this point. All right, so there you go. Biden has COVID. He's fine. Let's, what was I going to do? Oh, yeah. We were going to discuss whether or not Biden, let's say Kamala Harris had to take over for whatever reason. Would Kamala Harris be a worse or better president? Would she be worse or better than Joe Biden? So there's 2 ways you can go about this. And I'll take your thoughts as well, because I would like to hear. And of course, I'll get to your super chats. I see a few popping up. So first, we could look at the one that I think a lot of people in here would be of the opinion that she would be the same or worse. And that's because she's been terrible so far. But I contend that Kamala Harris has been a terrible VP because she has been handicapped by the White House. She's not really able to just be herself. And even when she is herself, as we saw in the primary in 2020, she's not that good. She was good in that first debate against Biden, and then it was all downhill. And once she made clear that her healthcare plan was not Medicare for all, her support really dropped off. And at the time I covered that, I showed you, it was like the same week that she clarified her stance on healthcare. That's the exact point her support dropped off, and Elizabeth Warren began to climb. So again, showing you how popular Medicare for all is, especially with the Democratic, voting base. But Kamala Harris, I would argue, would actually be potentially much better because I think she would feel the need to have to do something. Like if she really had to step in, she doesn't want to embarrass herself, right? At least that's the assumption. So to come in and then just do nothing, I think if she's looking ahead at a potential, run for, I guess would be her first term, then she would have to have, something to run on. So I actually think that she would try to rise to the moment. She would maybe try and pass Biden's Build Back Better plan. At least in terms of if she wanted to be a good politician, this is what she would do. She would grab that plan and try and bring it back to life and talk about how this was Biden's legacy. This is what he wanted to do. And if she was a good lawmaker, she would put that public pressure on Joe Manchin, on Kyrsten Sinema, about having to pass Joe Biden's legacy. This is the Joe Biden bill that we're going to pass in his memory. So like, that's the kind of, if she was a good lawmaker, that's what she would do. Now, if she's a good lawmaker is a big if, because I don't know if she would really be willing or even able to think like that, to understand the need to actually do something to help people. So ultimately, I don't know what the result would be, but could it get worse? Like, could it really get worse than how Joe Biden has been so far? I don't know. And there's a plus and minus to that, right? So if she's terrible, then it makes it a really easy primary challenge to get her out. But if she actually rises to the moment and does something and becomes popular, then it's a lot tougher to get, an actual working class fighter in there in a primary. At the same time, though, if she's actually going to help people, you can't really argue against that and still challenge her. Nothing wrong with still challenging despite any potential good she may bring. But this is a lot of course, living in imaginary land. Biden's going to be fine. He has 4 vaccinations, or I should say, fully vaccinated and 2 boosters, and he's on other medication. He's fine. Oh, you like my shirt? A few classic Broncos here. It's my favorite truck that I'll never get to own. But let me get to some super chats. Okay, so we'll do the Rising on the Hill. Hill Rising. I don't know what you called it, Rising on the Hill. So as Bavaria brought up earlier, I want to watch. I'll watch in like 2 times speed, so we speed through this. But they apparently covered the Joe Rogan Canada communist comments, and I wanted to see it, and it was apparently wild. But before any of that, let's get to Ryan Nowicki says, "What are your thoughts on SCOTUS backlash benefiting electoral turnout against Republicans, given more people vote against instead of for people?" So that last part of your sentence is only true because Democrats don't really offer anything. Like, if they actually were fighters and had a real platform, you would see higher turnout. A lot more younger people would be out there voting. And at that point, more people would vote for something as opposed to against something. But you're correct in terms of how things have been going. Yes, more people, at least Democratic voters, are largely voting against Republicans as opposed to voting for Democrats. And Biden winning was the biggest indication of that. I mean, the only scenario where Biden is ever going to win a general election is if he was pitted against Donald Trump during a pandemic. Like, that is the perfect, storm for Biden to win an election, as it would be for pretty much any Democrat that would be in his place would have won that election. But in terms of SCOTUS, like, these recent rulings, especially when it comes to Roe, I do think it's going to lead to, for some people, for some districts, for some demographic, a stronger turnout. I don't know if it's really going to bring out young people enough, as they are the most aware of how totally useless the Democratic Party is. That said, I've always advocated for voting. Like, as I've said before, voting is a tool. So if you ask me and someone with a platform here in terms of giving advice out, of course, like, voting is just a given. Yes, of course you should vote. And regardless of the situation, voting is a tool. So use the tool the best you can in that moment. So yes, voting against potential fascism, that is a good thing. Even if you're voting for someone who isn't that great, you still want to do what you can in one of the few areas you have some actual power. Do what you can to stop, things from getting worse. But I do think it may help bring out people who are, let's say, 30 and above or 40 and above. Actually, to be fair, when it comes to Roe, that is an issue that largely affects people 40 and under. So based on that alone, it may bring out more women to vote. I would hope more men would come out to vote too, but that's not, unfortunately, a given. But again, all of this is speculation on my part. I do think, though, turnout will be higher, but will it be high enough, I guess, is the question. And that I don't really know. What are these freaking stupid... Okay, you are being blocked. You moron. God, these stupid spam accounts. Anyways, what was I saying? So yeah, I do think turnout will be higher, but will it be high enough, I think is kind of the bigger question. Rhino Wiki also says, I've had issues finding your Friday streams or knowing if one would happen. Anything I can use to keep up with your schedule, keep it up, David. So I have not been doing regular Friday live streams. I've been really busy, so I've just not been doing them. So the only way to really keep up with what I do is to hit that bell icon below the video. You see it on the page. You're on the page right now. If it's full screen, make it a smaller screen. You will see a subscribe button. Hit subscribe if you're not already subscribed. And also hit that little bell icon near that button. Hit that icon and hit all. That will give you notifications on your phone. And I don't upload very often or go live very often. So it's like at most twice a day, usually at this point once a day. Because I'm doing longer videos now. So, you know, one notification a day isn't going to kill you. So hit that bell icon to be notified when I go live or when a video goes up. That's the best way to know. There's no other real way to, no other easier way to really follow this stuff. But yeah, my live streams are kind of when anything random happens that may pique my interest. Be it what I just covered. What did I do live last time? I don't know. I covered something else live recently. Oh, the SCOTUS decision on the EPA. I covered that live. Did I cover the one on abortion? Maybe I did. But anyways, I'll do live streams randomly. So it's hard to know when I'm going to do them. But that's why it's good to hit that bell icon to know for sure. Where was I here? Justin says, why are journalists / news anchors premising their convos with come November when Republicans take back the House? I get there's historical patterns, but I feel like what the news says happens because they keep saying it. I do think there is something to that, Justin. It's sort of this self-fulfilling prophecy where it's like the more you hammer into people's minds that there's no hope, that this thing is going to happen, then people sort of just disengage and figure, why even, get myself involved if this is going to be inevitable. I do think there is something to that. And, I think of 2016 when it comes to Hillary Clinton and how they covered that election, where you had places like MSNBC counting the super ballots. I'm forgetting the terminology now, but the voters in Congress or in government that were able to basically sway super ballots, which I guess are basically super ballots. The super delegates, they counted that towards her overall delegate count, even though they hadn't yet casted their votes. They hadn't yet supported Hillary Clinton, but it was sort of a given. And because they included those numbers in all the counts, it always seemed like even when Bernie was winning some certain states, they would have her viewed as the winner of that state because they included the count of the superdelegates. So would you, and that obviously was a little more intentional. I'm not sure how intentional this narrative about Republicans winning in the midterms is, but it is sort of like the reason it's adopted by a lot of people is because Democrats are historically terrible. And especially after winning, actually not just them, but it goes back and forth, right? So often this is what happens. You have the presidency by one party, and then in the midterms, the other party does better. That's been the consistent pattern for a while now. And especially when Democrats have been so historically terrible at fighting Republicans and being able to actually offer their own message, it's even more apparent that is likely what is going to happen. But that said, it's not guaranteed. And I think especially, as was mentioned earlier, with these recent rulings by the Supreme Court, and this being more of a discussion, and you seeing, as I just showed you recently, with the way the GOP are voting, like against abortion rights, against protecting interstate travel for reproductive care, against contraception, against marriage equality. When you see how extreme Republicans are, and this is what, it's one thing to have this. It's another for Democrats and the media to actually discuss this and have a consistent message. So the media, you know, they're going to do whatever. But the Democratic Party, they have to be the ones to set the narrative. They have to be the ones to bring this up again and again and again so that it becomes the dominating narrative. Because at this point, Democrats can't really sell you on what they're giving you. Because they ain't giving you much of anything, barely even fighting Republicans. But they can sell you on the extremism of the other party. And that at this point, that's their only message. So if they hope to be successful in the midterms, then they're going to have to harp on this. And if they don't, then yeah, it will be a shellacking against them. But again, none of this is given. It really depends on how Democrats decide to campaign over the next few months. Matthew Porter says, off-topic question, do you like the band Death Grips? I don't know enough. I know Anthony Fantano's a big Death Grips guy. I just haven't sat down and listened to Death Grips, so I cannot give you an opinion. Dwayne Bramble says VP Harris can be pushed from the left a little bit, but the powers that be would not allow it to go easy. 100%. Yeah. I mean, if Harris decided, again, in this magical world where she takes over, if Harris decided to actually try and pass something, absolutely. The people around her, her advisors, major players in the party would be trying to work against her, which is why she would have to really view this. And this is the only way that I would see her doing this, is she would have to see this as a necessity for her to be successful in her career. Because I really don't think, based on what she has done in her career and what she's done up to this point as VP, I really don't think she cares all that much about the impact on society. I mean, I think she cares a little bit more than the GOP do about, certain issues. But when it comes to what's in the Build Back Better bill and some of that economic help, I don't think she really cares all that much about that agenda, but she does care about her own numbers. She does care about her own popularity and being able to win an election. So if she sees that as a necessity to do something, to pass something, to actually, help people and have her numbers go up to help her in a future election, then she'll do that regardless of the powers fighting against her. So you really have to look at it as these politicians understanding what is best for them. Because of how selfish they all are, they have to understand that it's in their best interest. If they want to continue being successful, Kamala Harris, still young, still a young lawmaker, can still have many years ahead of her. So if she wants to remain popular or not remain, if she wants to get popular, because she's not popular, if she wants to become popular, she has to actually do something that may not be politically popular within her circle, but would be popular on the national stage. So it's that balance that she has to, deal with. Danny says, how about your fellow Canadian rapper Drake? I like Drake. He hasn't released anything good since 2015, but he's still good. He's still good when he can be. And be clear, he's a pop star. People try and be like, oh, but he's not as good as Kendrick Lamar or Eminem or whatever. Drake's a pop star. He's not, yeah, I agree with you. On a technical rap level, he's no Kendrick Lamar, but he's a pop star. Where am I on the chats here? Fly Chomperfly says, haven't been able to watch in a while. Caught some clips you posted, but was busy with primaries. I really like this Let's Watch Together format. Well, thank you. I'm glad you enjoy. I haven't been doing live streams a lot recently, if that's what you're talking about, but you should be checking the channel on a regular basis. I gotta say, my recent videos, some of them, I would argue, I know I'm biased here, I would argue, some of my best work has been in the past couple months. And it's because I'm doing more longer form content, so I'm trying to, really dig into these stories a little more, and while also keeping it entertaining and keeping you engaged and not just, sitting there drowning you with information. It's a delicate balance, but I do think my content has gotten a little better Chomperfly also says, FYI is same spammer that trolled other Prague hosts. Yeah, I think that's who you were talking about earlier. Just a random weird spam account. Matthew Porter says, think Andrew Yang still has a political future? Oh, God. I don't know. Andrew Yang is so terrible. Like, some of his tweets are just ridiculous. I don't know. I don't really care, I guess is the is the better answer. I don't really care about Andrew Yang's political future, but I don't really know. His forward party is just like, it's taking the mainstream media narrative of, look at these two extremes, the extreme right wing and the extreme Democratic Party with Joe Biden. Like, what? There's barely a difference here. I mean, even Nancy Pelosi still supported an anti-choice Democrat in the House in Henry Cuellar in just this past primary in Texas. That was like a few weeks ago. So when you're still supporting anti-choice Democrats, what difference is there between the two parties? Now, yes, clearly there's a lot more anti-choice Republicans, but if you aren't willing to have a clear division in terms of what you support as a party, then what the hell are you doing? So in terms of Andrew Yang, trying to find the middle ground there, like the middle ground, the actual middle ground, the actual middle of the country is way to the left of the Democratic Party. As I've shown in other videos, you look at any single poll on healthcare, on Social Security, on foreign policy, on the climate crisis, on taxes, go down the list on money and politics, every single major issue, people lean left. Now, maybe if you phrase a question in some weird conservative framing about certain cultural issues that people are still, afraid of because they're uninformed and stupid, then maybe you'll, get some people over, scaring them about like CRT or some garbage because you're framing the question incorrectly. You're not actually educating people what it is. So, maybe on some of those issues, if you're very racist and just moronic, then yeah, you'll get some people over to your side because you're fooling them. But if you're honest about the positions, what they are, including issues on something like trans rights or CRT, then yes, people lean on what is factual, on what is reality. Majority of people do. Unfortunately, you have a system where a majority does not rule. You have corporations and billionaires buying elections. You have them buying media. This is a point that I've wanted to get out in other videos somehow. If you ever have anyone in your life who's, watching garbage like Ben Shapiro or Steven Crowder or Dave Rubin, and they think that the left is bought by billionaires, that, we're bought by George Soros, all you have to do is compare the sets that each show has on each side of the spectrum. You can go back and watch even TYT, which now have a professional set, but you can see the progression there. Go watch their show like 10 years ago. It's not the same set as it is now, and there's a slow progression in terms of them building themselves up and getting to a more professional set. But people like Ben Shapiro, Crowder, Rubin have always had these perfect sets with a crew, with like a perfect backdrop and a desk and like a fantastic audio and microphone. That we haven't. Go back and watch my old videos. In fact, don't. They're embarrassing. But like, I have a shitty Yeti mic. I have like a weird black backdrop, like a plastic table. It's just, go back and watch Kyle's old videos. He has like 3 mics. The camera, it's like all this headroom above his head. The camera's all off. Like, go back and watch, Mike Figueredo. His set was different. And still to this day, I'm using a green screen. I can't afford like a crew and a proper set. It shows you who is bought. The point is here, one side have always had the money from the start. From the very start, they were given a ton of cash to run their shows. Where does that cash come from? It doesn't come out of thin air. When you start a YouTube channel, they don't give you a ton of cash. it came from their billionaire backers that support them, that want them to drive certain narratives that distract you from actual issues. So that is the biggest giveaway in telling who is full of shit and who isn't, is go back and watch their oldest videos. And they all had, their sets were all professional. Meanwhile, you go back and watch any of our videos on the left, and like Majority Report, they had like a paper backing with like their logo wallpapered. And even today, even today, none of our sets are really professional except for maybe TYT. And again, they are the longest, running YouTube show, so they have a basis there. But it's so obvious who is pumped full of billionaire cash and who isn't. Akira says Dems should reclaim the term pro-life and pass pro-life gun control, pro-life debt relief, pro-life climate change laws. Use the term for what it really means. I think that's a good idea. That's a good point. I do question the need, though, to have to use conservative framing, or like, you know what I mean? Like, I wonder what the value is in that. Like, I have no issue. You're correct in saying that all these things are pro-life. Yes, pro-life. Gun control is pro-life. Debt relief is pro-life. Climate change is, like, dealing with that is pro-life. But in terms of having a unified message around a term that is largely used by conservatives, I just wonder, is it... I feel like the messaging isn't really the issue as much as the lack of fight for those issues is the issue. Like, that's really the problem, is most politicians, most Democratic lawmakers aren't actually fighting for those things that you mentioned. And that is where, the bigger problem is. So yes, 100% Democrats could do better at messaging. I think largely that comes down to them needing to attack Republicans more. But the real underlying issue is when they're in power, they have to actually help people. And if they are unwilling to pass substantial legislation while in power, then, all the messaging in the world isn't going to really solve the problem. Kelly Elaine says, vote for the one with no money. Make the corporate bribes moot. Thank you for your massive, noticed your donation there. Jesus, thank you, Kelly. Very much appreciated. And yes, oftentimes those with no money are the better candidates. I mean, especially in Democratic primaries. All right. Forced birth party, yes. Mixed media says forced birth party. Yeah, that's another... It is sort of an exercise in retraining yourself because of how these topics are discussed, usually in the press. So having to think about how you're going to actually discuss this in a real way, like to call Republicans pro-life is so absurd on every level. They are the forced birth party. They are the anti-choice party. Toast Sandwich says, here's your money, David. George Soros. Thank you, George. Thank you, George, for your $3. That will go a long way towards building up my professional $1 million set and hiring a full crew of 6 people, 6 to 10 people to run the show. That is amazing, though, isn't it? Like, all these freaking frauds, they all have their own massive crew. Like... It is so dishonest. Like, Kyle Kalinski's been doing this for like 15 years. He has him. I mean, occasionally he's on like the Breaking Point set or whatever, and I guess they have a bit of a crew. But still mostly just him. Meanwhile, Crowder, crew. Shapiro, crew. Rubin, crew. Every single right-wing grifter, crew. I will say, though, George, $3. I think you could spare a little more. At least match Kelly here at 100. But, I'll take what George can give me. Brendan Wagner says, have you covered JP's villain arc? Jordan Peterson's on an arc, or has he always been this way? I covered his trans garbage recently. So I guess if that's his arc, I covered it. I have noticed when I put that video out, a lot of comments on that video talking about Jordan Peterson. He's talking about getting kicked off Twitter because he dead named Elliot Page. So in the comments on that video, a lot of people were like, I used to listen to Jordan Peterson, I used to enjoy him, and now he's just completely insane. And I'm seeing a lot more and more and more of that. And I think it's because it's just become overt now. Like, this is what Peterson does. He's fearmongers trans people for some reason. And really, that's how he began his public career, was fear-mongering about a bill in Canada that he claimed was going to send people to jail for misgendering individuals. Nobody, as far as I know, went to jail. It included it in hate speech. It's a part of it. We have hate speech laws here, so it was no different when you include trans people under that. But he began his public career that way, and I guess a lot of people maybe they missed that and thought he was just about self-help. But no, he got famous because he was anti-trans. So he's really just continuing on how he began, but I guess maybe in a more obvious way. Daisy says, hey, David, you are doing a great job keeping us informed and bringing clarity to the issues, and get better real soon, Joe Biden. America, turn your thoughts and prayers into register and vote. GOP out. Thank you, Daisy. And thank you, Thomas, for your little happy dance guy there and your donation. Should I still watch this video? Let's watch it. Let's zoom through this. So this was brought up earlier by Bavaria that said, did you see Rising on the Hill? Which I think they mean Hill Rising. A segment regarding Rogan / Communist Canada. It quickly transformed into an anti-trans rant. Plus more. It was crazy as F. All right, let's get a little taste of this. I'm just curious what the hell. 'Cause I don't know who this person is on the left. I've seen Robbie. I have not seen Batya.
King of podcasts, Joe Rogan, had this to say recently about Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Let's listen.
Canada's communist. Canada's crazy. They're They got to get rid of that guy.
How much time does he have? I feel like he's been prime minister for a while. Am I wrong?
I don't know. I don't know how their system works up there. I have zero understanding of their system.
Yeah?
I never looked into it at all. I didn't.
So I covered this clip already, but I got to say, because I didn't say it at the time for some reason. But to go from Canada's communist to saying literally the next sentence, I don't know how their system works. I know nothing about them. Oh my God.
I liked him. I liked him before the pandemic.
Trudeau?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, he's a handsome guy.
Yeah.
Seems sweet.
Yeah.
It's like good looking guy, confident, good talker.
Yeah.
And then during the pandemic, I'm like.
By the way, what does that say about your politics? If you're so fooled by someone that's good looking and well spoken that you just think they're a great politician, I mean, he's really telling on himself here. A couple years ago, Rogan said that Kyle Kalinske was his favorite political YouTuber. Does he still watch Kyle? Because it feels like Rogan has only gotten much worse.
Like, oh, you're a dictator.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't like criticism. You're trying to shut down criticism by saying that all your critics are misogynists and racists.
Yeah.
You hear he said that about the trucking people, the truckers?
He called them
all misogynists and racists.
Oof.
Yeah,
Yeah, not true, but okay.
He's gross. He's a sketchy guy.
Yeah.
And he's got some shaky deals. I would like to see where the money is coming from. Like why do you want everybody to get injected every 4 months? They don't need that anymore. Like what do we do?
What is he watching? This is just conservative garbage. Less than half of Canadians even have one booster. So what is this getting vaccinated every 4 months. Like, what are you talking about? And by the way, somebody brought this up on Twitter, so I'm going to read it out. Joe Rogan lives in Texas, a state where, one, it's a crime to sell a dildo. So he's calling Canada communist. I think he means authoritarian, but for him, it's the same thing. But he's calling Canada authoritarian, yet Texas, it's a crime to sell a dildo, which isn't exactly true. I looked this up, but there's regulations around how many dildos you can own, apparently. Like, there's basically the dildos are more regulated than a lot of things. So dildos, it's a crime in some ways to sell a dildo. It's a crime to seek an abortion. It's a crime to smoke a joint. And more of its population is in prison than any other democracy on earth. That's Texas. Free Texas. The very free Texas where you can't, where you can only own 12 dildos. Can't own 13. Just own 12 dildos. I'm paraphrasing, but there's some weird rule like that. It's really bizarre. Now, I'm not sure how enforced it is, but, you know, the abortion point alone, I think, is enough to drop the mic. You can't be calling other countries authoritarian when you are restricting abortion access. Nikki, and I'll continue this because we haven't even got to the points yet. But Nikki O'Brien says, thanks for your good work, David. I've been watching for a long time, but couldn't afford to donate until now. Greetings and thanks again from Fayetteville, Arkansas. Or is it Fayetteville? Arkansas. Thank you. Thank you, Nikki. Very generous donation as well. You didn't have to, but thank you. I appreciate it. Let's finish these comments.
What are you doing? You can't even get into Canada unless you're vaccinated.
Can't get in?
No. Make sure that's true. Because someone just told...
Which, by the way, I keep pausing this, but I covered this in my video. You also can't get into the U.S. as a foreigner if you're unvaccinated either. They have the exact same rule. So if you're Canadian, you can get into Canada. If you're American, you get into America. But if you're unvaccinated foreigner into either country, you can't get in. So the idea that this is like a uniquely Canadian thing is so stupid.
Told me. Whitney just told me. She had to show her vaccination card to get into Canada.
That seems...
It's a little...
Like it adds up further.
It's old.
Yeah.
Like, it's 2022. It's not 2019.
You know where it still feels... Because I think things sway there so aggressively when something happens, where it feels like, you're like, wait, what time is it right now?
They go on about New York for like 2 minutes. I don't know why that they're even showing that.
Might be bleeping some of those words, I think, before this goes live. So hopefully you didn't. Or hopefully you did. I don't care. It's for whatever our television standards are. Anyway, interesting sentiments from Joe Rogan. I just Googled it. It does look to me. I thought Canada's requirement that you need to get vaccinated to enter. I had thought that had maybe lapsed, but I just Googled it. It looks like it still is the case, and obviously. Non-Americans coming to America actually also have to be vaccinated still, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But there you have it. What did you make of Rogan's comments there, Batya?
Sorry, somebody said something I want to mention. Oh, yeah. Tom Segura is better than this. I agree. That was from Derek. Yeah, I do think Tom Segura is better than this. And you can see him kind of try to move the conversation along on Canada. He didn't want to harp on it too long because I don't think he knew shit. And if he wasn't Rogan's friend, Tom Segura would be making fun of Rogan because he's the kind of person that Tom Segura would make fun of. But because they are friends, that, it's not going to happen.
I, too, started to see Justin Trudeau in a very different light after the truckers' convoy. Before that, I had thought that he was a sort of like, a kind of like flabby liberal, right? Like, how much harm could this person really do, right? It's in human rights. Like, he has a weird way of expressing himself, maybe very...
Oh, my God. To see Americans that don't know shit about the convoy talk about the convoy is very frustrating. To be fair, not just Americans, to see anyone that doesn't know shit about the convoy talk about the convoy is very frustrating as somebody who covered it closely. Trucker group after trucker group after, union after union were like, this is not us. 90% of truckers are vaccinated. there's maybe a sliver of those who. So in terms of the vaccinated population, in terms of the rate of vaccination, the truckers were vaccinated at the same rate as the rest of Canada. So they weren't some outlier of like, oh, there's more unvaccinated truckers than I don't know, teachers or something. It wasn't the case. Exact similar number to the rest of Canada. So the convoy was launched by far right-wing individuals with ties to far alt-right groups, a couple of which, or at least two of which that I can recall, maybe three or more, went to jail after it because of the shit they were doing and they were engaged in. So this is all this idea about, oh, do it for the truckers, stand up for the truckers. It was all bullshit from the start. And for these people to claim that they're on the side of the working class truckers is such garbage, when it was largely the actual truckers that were there, which again, very few of them were actual truckers, but the ones that were there were the employers. They weren't, the working class truckers. They were the ones running the companies. So it's really stupid to see the way this has been, construed. But it doesn't matter how many facts you get out there. These people aren't going to take it because it doesn't serve their narrative.
Very much in that sort of college educated manner. But, how much harm could a person with these kind of like human rights values actually do? And what we saw was he descended into this total caricature of what, we've been calling the laptop caste, the pajama class, right? Somebody who misunderstands his obsession with COVID as some sort of like, virtue, when actually what it is elites enforcing their standards on the very people who they rely on to keep them alive, right? And then exactly like Rogan said, he smeared.
What is any of this? There's been vaccines forever. I guarantee you that she is vaccinated. Not just the COVID vaccine, many other vaccines, because this is a part of science. This is what we've learned. Hey, to not have this disease, to not have polio, you got to get these vaccines. And guess what? Polio disappeared until like today. There's like one case now in New York, apparently, the first since 2008. But this is why we vaccinate, to eliminate these viruses, or at least in the case of COVID, downplay the effects of it. But they treat it as like the elites talking down to you. Yet, what are the criticisms when it comes to the actual, who actually has gained in terms of wealth during the pandemic? Like, that should be the bigger critique here. If you care about the elites and their hold on power, then you should be discussing why are billionaires doubling their wealth during the pandemic while everyone else is making less, while everyone else's wealth is going down. Like, that is the actual critique you should be having if you cared about the elites. But instead, it's a purely cultural discussion about, oh, they're making me feel bad because they called me a bigot or a racist, or they told me to get a vaccine and I didn't want to. Like, it's just pure surface level. And again, a complete distraction from the actual issues, which is what conservative media does. They distract you with the garbage so that they can continue selling their pro-billionaire, pro-corporate policies.
Those truckers as fascists and Nazis because they had this populist wellspring of support against this very, elite top-down, I'm going to enforce on you while relying on you to survive. I'm going to tell you what to do while I need you. And
no, they were called that because they were literally Nazis and fascists. Like, that's what the organizers of the convoy, that's what they were. They were not truckers.
I think that it was sort of like that truckers convoy, and now what you're seeing in the Netherlands with the farmers, like there really is an uprising, a populist uprising against the elites happening, across the globe. And when Trudeau sort of leaned into his kind of authoritarian, condescension, rather than accepting the criticism and recalibrating, that to me was like, it was a really telling moment because it put the lie to my previous thoughts of like, well, how much trouble could this liberal actually get? How much could this, person with these liberal values, how much could he actually hurt people? And the answer was a lot. He could hurt them a lot. And I think that
How? Is she going to say how they were hurt? Is she going to say how? Look, I don't even like Trudeau. I don't want him to be prime minister. But this is not this is not the better option here. Is she going to say anything about how they were hurt? How were they hurt? Their feelings were hurt? Or were they actually hurt?
that thing where he now represents that sort of elite condescension that has a kind of semi-authoritarian side to it, that doesn't only call the working class Nazis and racists for objecting to their own oppression, right? But actually forces them to put something in their body that maybe they don't want to, or not be able to feed their families. Like, this is something that's emerging. It's emerging here as well, and it's really dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely.
There was nothing there. That was pure surface level garbage. There was nothing there.
Absolutely, and I think it
Yes, I'm playing at 1.5 speed because I'm not going to play this at normal speed. That's not going to happen.
shows how this kind of political figure, this kind of candidate, is losing voters that the Democratic, or in Canada it's not Democratic, but the Liberal coalition, the Blue coalition, needs to stay in power. Is someone like Joe Rogan, who, let's remember, even though now he's associated and tarred as this right-wing figure, was a supporter, favorably disposed toward Bernie Sanders, and has said that multiple times. And for him to be kind of pushed into a kind of more Team Red coalition.
Wait, hold up. I was like zoning out while he was talking.
To stay in power is someone like Joe Rogan, who, let's remember, even though now he's associated and tarred as this right-wing figure, was a supporter, favorably disposed toward Bernie Sanders, and has said that multiple times. And for him to be kind of pushed into a kind of more Team Red coalition, it's taken actions like what Justin Trudeau and I'm sorry, also many Democrats in the U.S. have done with respect to kind of identity.
How are you comparing Trudeau to Bernie Sanders? Rogan moved from Bernie to being more right-wing because of Trudeau, who is diametrically opposed ideologically to Bernie Sanders. You have a neoliberal and a democratic socialist. None of this is coherent. It's like a bunch of just conservative buzzwords just thrown out there.
Politics, COVID, and some other topics that are pushing independent-minded left and populist people toward the Republican Party. It's because of this stuff. It's because of over-the-top.
Yes, very populist to be anti-abortion, to be anti-contraception, to vote against abortion rights, to vote against interstate travel for reproductive care, to vote against contraception access, to vote against marriage equality. So populist. Yet, interestingly, the populist position is to be in support of all of these things. But no, Republicans, populist ones, based on what information? Based on what positions? Again, nothing. It's all about, oh, my feelings were hurt because he pointed out that there were Nazi flags at the trucker rally. Oh my God. So now I'm going to be in support of Nazis. Like if that's how if that's how terrible your politics are, that somebody calling you out for being a Nazi is going to make you even more of a Nazi, okay, I guess there's no winning that. But the idea that somehow, like the thing with Rogan is just a pure reactionary. It's like whoever's in front of him, he'll change based on the week. He doesn't know what the hell is going on. He's very disconnected. He's had, especially recently, a lot of commentary about very anti-poor, that joking about the homeless thing, about shooting homeless people. That was one. But even talking about how people don't want to work anymore. I covered this video where Rogan was talking to a friend of his who just happens to own a restaurant, because of course he's not talking to the waiters, and apparently the restaurant owner can't get people to show up to work anymore. Maybe because they don't want to work starvation wages, maybe because they can't afford to live in LA on the salary they are making, or the tips they are making at that restaurant. Like, this is, again, Rogan is completely disconnected from the working class, yet they're the ones trying to claim that Rogan is speaking up for the working class. A 100-millionaire podcaster, UFC commentator, speaking for the working class, that is completely disconnected from reality? I don't think so.
Wokeness, craziness on COVID, disdain for working people who are protesting or treating their protests like, it's the end of the world. When they celebrated the Black Lives Matter police injustice protests were celebrated, other protests were derided. That had an effect. You're seeing that effect in people like Rogan, and we talk about him a lot in the show because he's a big audience. His audience overlaps somewhat, at least I think, with our own. So it's interesting to follow the trajectory. But the trajectory should be concerning if you're a Democrat, isn't it? Terrifying? And instead of seeing panic from Democrats that they're losing these people, what I see is almost a contempt. Well, good riddance. They're racist. We don't want them as part of our team anyway. We want our team to be only the most morally pure, upstanding, identity-driven people. And
If someone is literally racist, why would they vote for Democrats over Republicans? So yes, in terms of messaging issues and in terms of educating people, yes, it's important as people that are ones trying to win them over to not talk down to certain groups of people who are the ones that are honestly confused, the ones that honestly want to learn, the ones that honestly want to, support the right causes, do the right thing. Yes, that's why it's important not to say if you're, at a barbecue and your uncle brings up, trans issues and he's really ignorant and stupid. Don't make that person feel dumb. Like you can educate them in a way. If he honestly wants to learn and know better, then there's a way to discuss these issues in a way that doesn't make that person feel stupid. Yes, it's very important to be able to educate and talk to others in a one-to-one manner that doesn't talk down to them. But when it comes to people that have platforms, when it comes to those that have power already, when it comes to lawmakers, people like Josh Hawley, who was called out for being transphobic, when it comes to them, they know better, especially in the case of someone like Josh Hawley. They know better. They have power. It's important to call out their bullshit because you have to expose them for who they are. Now, when it comes to those that maybe follow them and are just confused, then yes, there's a different, way to message there. But people in power, the message changes depending on what the audience is, who you're talking to. And just, again, all of this is very empty because he doesn't bring up, at least so far, no actual policy about why the GOP are somehow better off for the working class. Like, what are you talking about? Yes, both parties, terrible, largely for the working class. But when it comes to one, Republicans definitely a little worse. There is no squad in the GOP. There is no Bernie Sanders voting with Republicans. There is a reason for that.
And they're going to be down to a coalition of like 16.
Right. We know from Pew that only 6% of Americans are what they would consider progressive. 6%. It's so teensy compared to the amount of attention that they.
How people self-identify with a name, with a label, does not equal actual policy positions. Again, this is such stupid commentary. I've mentioned this point in other videos as well. Like if you look at polling on how people self-identify, and it largely the choices are conservative, moderate, or liberal. Most people say moderate or conservative. Yet, when you poll those same people on actual policy positions, do you want to expand access to healthcare? Do you want universal healthcare? Majority say yes. Do you want higher taxes on the rich and lower taxes on the poor and middle class? The answer is yes. Do you want to deal with the climate crisis in a real and responsible way that puts support into renewable energy? The answer is yes. Go down the list of policies. The vast majority of people support the progressive policy. Labels mean shit because how certain people view a label is different than how other people view that label. You may think of, being moderate as, I'm a fiscal conservative and a whatever. The thing is, there's so many different ways to view these labels. So like usually this is how the stuff plays out. When it comes to the self-labeling, people usually attach their cultural views or their reactionary views to that label. So, certain people may be in support of or maybe unaware of, let's say, trans issues, and they may attach that issue or those topics or the idea of wokeness, whatever the hell that means, to liberal. So they're not liberal because they're not woke. They don't want to be labeled as woke because they don't speak down to others about not knowing anything about, this or that. So they don't view themselves as liberal. Yet, those same people would support expanding healthcare. Those same people would support a wealth tax on the very wealthy. Those same people would support higher wages when it comes to a living wage. So it's It all depends on the individual, and that's why labels are so stupid. You have to look at the actual policies. What are the policies that you support? And that is what that person actually supports.
They take up on our airwaves. I totally agree with you, Robbie. I think for decades, the left represented the kind of commonsensical, obvious point of view that was not reflected in reality, that every human deserves to live in dignity. That was a left-wing proposition that the right did not agree with, right? For many, many decades, they didn't believe in gay rights, let's say, equality for gay marriage. They didn't believe in, equal protections for women. They were not as concerned with civil rights. The civil rights movement was opposed by many Republicans, which is when the Democrats got that lock on black voters, right? All of these are commonsensical, obvious ideas. They're thousands and thousands of years old, right? The idea that we're all
And how is that going today?
created equally in God's image, and we all deserve to live in dignity. That was a left-wing proposition for decades. That
And now what? The Republicans are all in support of equality? Is that what she's trying to argue now?
is now an idea that the left kind of, to me anyway, seems opposed to, right? If you talk about Dr. King's vision that we be judged based on our character, not the color of our skin, forget it. They consider that to be racist now.
Oh, yes, of course. Dr. Martin Luther King, he would be big supporter of Donald Trump and the right wing. He would, oh my goodness, he absolutely would hate. Actually, he would hate the Democratic Party for obvious reasons. But he was a socialist. He was on the left. He was clearly on the left. To bring him up in this conversation is so sad and just embarrassing.
You tell them that, women deserve to live, in dignity with equality. They're like, well, what's a woman? What about trans women, right? Now the
Oh my God.
right has become associated with.
Yeah, what? Is she trying to claim that he would be against equal rights for trans people? This is some disgusting shit.
With the commonsensical idea that people should be able to live in dignity with autonomy, should be able to make their own decisions about what happens to their body and to their children, right? That is now bizarrely become a right-wing proposition.
What? How can you say this? How can you say this? I didn't think she would actually go there. I thought she was gonna beat around it because she couldn't actually claim that Republicans are the ones in support of this stuff now. But she did. That's the turn she made there. That was incredible. Let's listen to that again.
Be able to live in dignity with autonomy.
Hold up, I gotta slow this one down. That was too amazing.
Now the right has become associated with the commonsensical idea that people should be able to live in dignity with autonomy, should be able to make their own decisions about what happens to their body and to their.
The right is associated with bodily autonomy and what should happen to your own body. Are you fucking kidding me? How stupid is this lady? I shouldn't say stupid. How dishonest is this? She has to know she's full of shit. She has to. Who is paying her to be this dumb?
Children, right? That is now bizarrely become a right-wing proposition almost. And I think that is something that's exactly what you're pointing to. And nobody embodies that like Joe Rogan and the shifting sands beneath him that had him once standing kind of on the liberal side and now sort of more identified with, I don't want to say the right, but certainly with the populist energy.
To your point.
Yeah, it's very populist to talk about your friend who owns a restaurant saying that people don't want to work anymore when they're getting underpaid. Very, very populist to be in support of a Florida governor, to want him for president when he is anti-trans, anti-weed, anti-abortion, is trying to restrict bodily autonomy, is trying to restrict you being able to use a plant that's been used for hundreds, if not thousands of years and has no real negative impact. It just, especially like considering how pro-weed Rogan is, for him to be living in an anti-weed state in Texas and to be in support of an anti-weed Republican governor in Florida, it's like, look, weed isn't the most important issue, but it shows you it's an indication of who that person is. Biden at least faked it, right? Biden also anti-weed, but he pretended to want to make it or to decriminalize it. And the Democratic Party, the only one having that conversation in a serious way. I think there's maybe like one or two Republicans that want to legalize weed, but it's largely a Democratic issue. And again, it goes to speaking to actual freedoms. Again, none of these actual policies are being brought to the conversation. She's completely ignoring everything the GOP have been doing, including the extremist right-wing Supreme Court. It is just, this is an alternate universe.
Point, I think
don't they normally have on like one conservative and one, you know, not as bad person? Like this is just two complete dipshits here.
Progressives have lost the language a little bit of being able to talk about universal principles because they're so focused on disparate harms to specific groups. So that's the way all problems have to be filtered through that. I think you saw that pretty clearly with like the messaging on abortion rights going away or being rescinded, where
like the civil rights fight, these same people would be calling it a disparate harm, or what was he saying? Harm to disparate groups. Basically trying to treat these issues as like, oh, not important, minor issues, just these minority groups that are being oppressed by the state, whatever, who cares about that? Not important issues. These exact same people would be on the wrong side of civil rights, using the exact same logic.
Specific groups. So that's the way principles, because they're so focused on disparate harms to specific groups.
Disparate harms to specific groups. Quite a way to downplay reproductive rights, quite a way to downplay trans rights, and what is being done to families in Texas. Some parents having their kids being taken away because they allowed their kid to be who they are. To downplay all of that and try and claim the left is authoritarian when it's right-wing Republican states that are the ones doing this garbage is just, it's an amazing feat of, you know, gymnastics here.
Groups. So that's the way all problems have to be filtered through that. I think you saw that pretty clearly with like the messaging on abortion rights going away or being rescinded, where the ACLU starts tweeting about how this will disproportionately affect, you know, LGBT people, et cetera, which makes no sense. You know, this is, you know, if you're going to make, if you're someone who's going to argue that this is a bad thing and these rights going away are wrong, you can make a very universal case. This affects, you know, very.
But isn't that the bigger issue? That those rights are being stripped away as opposed to what the ACLU said in their statement in one sentence? That, you know, bothers you for some reason? I don't know why you would even care about that. But why is that the focus? Again, these are distractions. They have to focus on one sentence in the ACLU's press release as opposed to what the Republican Party and their project has been doing for 40 years to strip rights away from people. How is that not the focus here?
It very much affects one of the two main like distinguishers of all human beings, women. But they can't use that language because if it doesn't affect a smaller minority group, that's what they're comfortable with criticizing. Like, oh, this is a bad policy or bad idea because it harms this smaller interest group that we're very. That are all of our language and all of our marketing and all of our activism is now oriented around protecting, which I'm not saying that, you know, you should, you know, be against those people or do anything, but it's not additional. It's not in addition to normal. We're also going to look out for these people. It's like we can only talk about it if it's this kind of thing. And that language is alienating to so many people.
But literally stripping the right away, that's not alienating. Limiting the ability for women to access health care, that's not restricting. That's not limiting their freedom. No, it's the messaging that the ACLU put out in their press release in that one sentence. Very alienating. Like you give a shit about what they release in their press releases. But I'm sure, you know, Ben Shapiro, somebody grabbed this one piece and then the entire right talked about it and that became the big story as opposed to the actual right being stripped away. Like, these people, their arguments fall apart in milliseconds, just upon the slightest reading of what they're trying to sell you here. The propaganda is just incredible. And this guy, I think, knows better, because he was struggling a little bit, because I think he was catching himself, realizing he was making no fucking sense. But, like, oh my God, it is just amazing, the shit they focus on.
And I think, Robbie, this ties into one of your bugaboos, which is the masking. You know, you'll often hear people say, well, there are immunocompromised people. We should all be invested in protecting them, right? Like the idea that there is a subgroup that has an extra something, an extra requirement, an extra need, and that everyone, like 95% of people who are not immunocompromised, should now change in order to accommodate that. You know, it reminds me of.
Yeah, like, you know, when someone has a peanut allergy in class, and the teacher says, don't bring peanuts, and you're like, screw that, I'm bringing in all the peanuts. And then you kill the child in the class. That's freedom. The ability to kill people that are vulnerable. That's when you're truly free. These fucking psychopaths.
A lot of when they talk about birthing persons, like, you know, in 10 years, how many trans men are going to have had a baby? Is it going to rise to double digits? You know what I mean? Like, it's such a tiny percentage of who's going to end up requiring that kind of language.
Yet, isn't it interesting? This is your focus here. That's what they're focusing on. Because one person said birthing, no one is making a pregnant woman call themselves a birthing person. If anyone thinks that is a made up, completely manufactured talking point from the right. No one is saying that. But if somebody is trans and they're having a child and they're not a woman, maybe they don't want to be referred to as a pregnant woman. So to understand that really is just to be humane. Just to treat people with dignity. This is who this person is. This is their name. This is their pronouns. Okay, that's who they are. Why is there even a discussion here? Like, who cares? But they're the ones generating an entire narrative around this because, again, there's nothing to actually offer anybody. As you've seen in this entire segment, no mention at all about any policy, anything. It's just pure, this vague cultural discussion, vaguely around these issues. And then even going as far as to claim that Republicans are the ones standing up for bodily autonomy, as they are the ones literally stripping the right of women away. Okay, let's finish the end of this garbage. See, where else can this possibly go?
That kind of activism, but everybody else is supposed to be involved in this sort of mass accommodation of this, you know, tiny minority.
Right. Right, and right, and you can acknowledge that because any rule, any category you try to establish, there will always be exceptions. But you know, you say the overwhelming majority of people who give birth are women, and there are, because of anatomy, because there are always going to be exceptions. There's always going to be edge cases.
And no one's arguing this. These are straw man arguments. No one's arguing this.
But we don't have to act like the main rule, the main definition doesn't cover virtually all cases, because it does. And that's not harmful. I don't think that's hateful to acknowledge. It's certainly not causing violence, despite, you know, what was kind of implied at. We're dancing around that hearing that took place last week between Josh Hawley and that doctor who he had that interesting
Berkeley professor, yes.
Because that was a statement that was a part of a larger discussion around these issues that included everyone who gave birth. That was the discussion. But no one's telling anyone who is pregnant, who's a woman, to say, don't call yourself a woman. Like this, again, these are just completely manufactured narratives around nothing. And why was that hearing happening? Because Republicans stripped reproductive rights, abortion rights away. Yet that's perfectly fine. That isn't worthy of the discussion here. What's worthy of the focus is the term birthing person, and you don't want to say birthing person. That's worthy of your discussion, but the actual stripping of rights away, not that important apparently. These people are psychotic.
Conversation with. All right, well, tomorrow on Rising, we're going to dig into what exactly is causing inflation, as we've...
Oh my God. Okay, that's the end of it, thank God. Jesus Christ. Anyways, You're still here. Okay. Let me grab some chats. Let me get these terrible people off my screen and this terrible guy off my screen too. Let's leave this up just to remind y'all about who's stripping the rights away, or at least trying to. I mean, these are House votes. Luckily, they're all losing votes. I'm sure the Senate will not pass any of this, but I guess we'll have to see. I did hear or see Rob Portman apparently co-sponsored, who's a Republican senator, co-sponsored the same-sex marriage bill. So we'll see if that passes. But then again, I think you still need 60 votes. So I'm going to guess no. But anyways, let me grab some chats here. Evan says, "Hey, David, sent you a DM on Twitter about collaborating with Ryan Hall y'all. We do weather forecasting and have over 500,050 subs. I read that weird. 550,000 subs. And we would like to have a conversation about how we can benefit each other." Well, thank you, Evan. I'll be honest, I don't really do collabs, not for any other reason except that it's time consuming to think about. Like, when it comes to me talking to anybody, like doing interviews or whatever, I have very little time. I'm doing this right now because I have some time, but like I have a kid. I basically like wake up, do my video, do my research, do my video, make sure my child's taken care of, and like go about my day. So it's nothing against you, but it's unlikely I'm going to be collabing with anybody anytime soon. But I do appreciate you reaching out. Robin Bennett, thank you for the super chat. MDJ says, "Hi, David. It's kind of telling that as an American, I need to get actual news and support from a Canadian. Love you. Hope your precious son is doing great." He is doing great. And thank you, MDJ. I'm glad you enjoy the show, and very generous chat as well. In fact, all these super chats, by the way, all very generous. Thank you all so much. Le Bouc Bleu says, "The Hill sucks when it is just two right-wing nuts." Yeah, I've never actually, like, I've seen the show before, but I've never watched it when it was just two right-wingers on. And man, that was something else. Just total bullshit. Amazing. Jonathan Leiter says, "Does this guy sound like Ben Shapiro's whine, or is it just me? Keep up the good fight, David." I would say Ben Shapiro's a little whinier than what's his name, Rob, than Rob is, but there's some similarities. Nikki says, "Damn, that was painful. Psychopaths indeed." Indeed. Just amazing stuff. And yeah, so Ryan Grimm has been on there a few times, or actually quite a bit, I think. And I enjoy him, though I will say I feel like Ryan Grimm's, I feel like he's been taken down like a notch since I feel like maybe the right-wing garbage is getting to his head a bit, because I've seen him tweet some dumb shit. But that said, he's largely great. I'm not canceling Ryan Grimm. Ryan Grimm still does great work. I just think he's been maybe a little impacted by his surroundings. But that, and there's someone else, I forget her name. Oliemi, I think that's her name. Who's fantastic. Just fantastic. All right, looking through chats here. What else is going on, people? Before I'm not going to be on here forever, but I'll check. Let me check Twitter, see if I missed some news. Check some of my news, some news sites. Oh yeah, tonight is the January 6th hearing. Which, oh, look at this. MAGA lawmakers who trembled during January 6th attack will be humiliated at Thursday hearing, according to a report. Well, That'll be interesting to see what that's all about. So the committee plans to use its Thursday night hearing to call out insurrection-friendly lawmakers who cowered during the Capitol attack but have since downplayed the insurrection's severity. So that's according to Rolling Stone. One source told the magazine they have plans to paint a really striking picture of how some of Trump's greatest enablers of his coup plot were, no matter what they were saying today, quaking in their boots and doing everything shy of crying out for their moms. Oh, that's a great quote. If any of these lawmakers were capable of shame, they would be humiliated, the source added. That is an important point to make, though. If they were actually capable of shame, then they'd be humiliated. But I don't think they are able to experience shame. Look, I hate that sites do this shit. Like, where's the X on this stupid video? I want to read the page. See that? Invisible X. It was there in the corner, but I had to mouse over it. Just terrible. Terrible. We've gone backwards in terms of website design. Never thought that'd be the case. The bulk of the Thursday night hearing is expected to focus on Trump's actions during the insurrection, including whether he took any action to defuse the riot at the time when lawmakers were under attack, the magazine reported. But using photos and footage to slap down MAGA lawmakers' claims of a tourist visit from peaceful patriots is part of a broader effort to bring reality to bear on a fictitious pro-Trump reimagining of January 6th. Okay, we will see. God, apparently I really need to buy some shirts and pants from My Teresa. I think I need the skirt. It's called the Marnie. Look at that. That's oh, those are shorts. Look at that. This blouse. I think I need that blouse. Okay, so that's tonight. I don't think I'll be live streaming it, but you know, maybe if some crazy shit happens. Got some more chats here. CBP says it's crazy how I get more factional news from you, Kyle, TYT, Humanist Report, Breaking Points, and actually organized corporate news. It is crazy. Kevin says abundance is the enemy of capitalism, and all these talking heads work for corporations whose bottom line is profit. It's all a scam. I agree. Yeah, on the point about news, I mean, there was a poll that came out. I think it was UK based, but people under 30, it's like the vast majority of them get their news from Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. I think Facebook was in there too, which Facebook's the worst place. Facebook is worse than like Fox News because it's largely very right-wing propaganda. I mean, you know, I'm on Facebook, but in terms of what generates popularity on there, it's a lot of, you know, not to, there are some older people in the audience that are great. You're awesome. But let's be honest, it's largely larger segments of older generations that are the ones pushing a lot of this garbage. That said, yes, of course, there are, you know, young Nazis and shit. But in terms of who has power, look at government. And Facebook is the worst because of that, though. It's just that, like, Ben Shapiro regularly is in the top, like, is like 6 of the top 10 slots when it comes to like top Facebook videos for the week. Like every week he's like top 6 of the top 10. It's just, it's a terrible place. But anyways, point being that, yeah, I mean, do you know anybody under 30 who watches the news? Like, who like sits down, turns the TV on, turns the cable box on, and, you know, goes to the nightly news channel? It's very slim amount of people. So yeah, most people, of course, get their stuff online, but it's about who they get it from, right? Like, it's like asking people, do you get your news from, you know, TV? It's like, yes, but what channel is what matters. So you can say, because I was seeing some people like eye roll that you know, kids got their news from Instagram, But if it's good sources, like what if it's CNN on Instagram? Like not good to me, but good to the audience that frowns upon that stuff. What if they're getting their news from, sources that you like that happen to be on Instagram? So it's all about who the source is. Just the platform is sort of not really important. It's about who's actually delivering the news. And that's what I want to see. I want to see like real polling on what specific sources, like, Young Turks, Daily Wire, CNN, like what actual outlets are they getting news from? Hermit says, I started watching news when I was 14, but I was weird. I mean, I watched news too growing up, and occasionally still I'll turn on like, CBC News or less so now. I used to watch, CTV News like a few years ago. I used to work at CTV News, so it's also maybe part of why. But I kind of stopped doing that now. Like if I watch CBC, which I'll still watch, but I'll watch it on YouTube, and it'll be over, a topic where it's not about political opinions. It's more about, the news, as in like what's happening in the UK with these forest fires or something. So I'll still watch, those more traditional news sources, but just not in a traditional fashion on television. Johnny Bravo says, do you think the Supreme Court should be abolished? It's inherently undemocratic. I would say, not being an expert on this, because I'm not an expert, I would refer to someone like Elie Mystal, but I would say yes. I would say yes. I mean, at the very least, expand it. It has to be reformed in some way, because I agree with you. It is inherently undemocratic. You have these unelected 9 judges that basically have more power than anybody else, and they're unelected, and they're largely put there by the Federalist Society over like a 40-year project to transform the court so they could overturn rights. So yeah, it's inherently undemocratic, and it's literally now stripping rights away. So something has to be done, whether it's abolished or reformed. I think the bigger question is who is willing to actually do that, because we know Biden's not. Even Bernie was sort of hesitant on expanding the court. He was more into putting rules in place where there were term limits and that kind of thing, which I'm also in support of. But like something substantial has to be done, and done soon, before, everything's lost. Because you can't have these people in there like Biden unwilling to challenge the power that is currently stripping rights away. Six Face says, hashtag delete Facebook. I would have already done that if it wasn't for the fact that I post my videos on Facebook too. So that's the only reason I still use it. I'm trying to lessen the blow of the Ben Shapiros out there, but it's tough. Rad Zoso says, I recommend getting the reader mode extension for your browser. That's a good point. In fact, I have a little, I think I have something here. Look at this stupid shit. I think I have some extension that does something. Anyways, I'll check later. But no, you're right. That would help with these pop-ups for sure. All right. It's getting hot in here, so I'm going to maybe spend 5-10 more minutes and get out of here. Super Tim says, you are doing great, David. Thank you, Tim. A lot of people in support of Elie I keep calling, his name is Elie Mystal. Elie. I keep wanting to say Eli. I have a friend named Eli, so I keep wanting to say Eli. But yeah, a lot of support here for Elie Mystal. Indeed. He is fantastic. In fact, I hope he gets his own show, like if he wants that. Actually, I really hope he runs for office. Like he's He's the kind of person that Democrats actually need. But when it comes to any issue on the Supreme Court, I go to him immediately. He knows his shit. Golden State of Mind says Dave's going to take off his clothes. I can't. I have a family. If I didn't, I'd think about it. I don't know, that OnlyFans money is tempting, but when you got a family, it's a little tougher to do that. Lon Zeta says, I appreciate the random stream. I miss the Friday live stream days. I know. I would like to do a regular live stream. The thing is, Fridays at the time I was doing it's not possible anymore for me, considering the structure of my life right now with my kid. But Thursdays at 2:00, I mean, that worked for today. Maybe I'll think about that. The thing is, it really depends on the day. Like some days there's a big story, I want to cover it, and there we go. So this is always my issue with having any sort of, planned like live stream is, what if there's a story I want to cover and do a video on, yet I have a planned live stream, and then it, interferes with that. So that's always been my issue with having any kind of consistent live stream plan, is just if it interferes with me doing a video, then it's a problem. Derek says, what would be the best way to not let Democrats have any excuses so they can't keep saying vote? You have to vote the shitty ones out in primaries. That's ultimately the only way. Because clearly, like, people, the thing people used to say and still try to say, yet somehow forgot 2016, was, well, don't vote for them. Once Hillary loses, then the Democratic Party will wake up and they'll realize they have to serve the working class. How'd that work out? No, they're going to fight till they're dead. They're going to, in terms of politically dead, they're going to keep fighting and fighting it. We're talking about greedy, pro-corporate millionaires and billionaires. So they're not going to just be like, okay, working class, you take over. No, they're going to keep fighting, keep fighting. You have to eliminate them in primaries. That's ultimately, in terms of electoral politics, the only way. The other way, outside of voting and primaries, is of course unions, and you're seeing a lot of that now. In fact, one of the stories I'm working on that I may still do at some point, you're seeing new industries now begin to unionize. So we've seen Starbucks, we've seen Amazon. Now there's some other industries, ones that forever have seen no support for the working class, an industry that has been overworked to their bone. I'm talking about the gaming industry, overworked to their bone. Now there's been at least 3 unions pop up. As I am losing my voice, I can feel it. I have like dry coffee to soothe my dry throat. But there's at least 3 unions now that are developing in the gaming industry. So when you see something like that, that's what gives me hope, is that kind of power being built up, and you will see more of that. In addition to, people are more in support of unions now than ever before. So a lot of good stuff happening on that front. Are you kidding me? I've been muted for how long now? Oh, Jesus Christ. You know what bugs me is that you guys are going to see this if you stayed this long. This is like 2 minutes. This is like a 2-minute delay. So I'll be talking now for about 2 minutes with no audio, and now I'm clicking unmute and I'm talking. But because the chat is 2 minutes behind, you get 2 minutes of me not talking. Let me just put in the chat. You guys missed so much. Damn, I just cussed everybody out in the industry. You missed it all. I named the names. I named all the names. I named all the names. You missed it all. Oh well. Never again will I be able to repeat such commentary. It was just in the moment. To be honest, I'm not even sure what I talked about for 2 minutes. Oh, primaries. So how far back was that mute? When did I click it? I coughed, I muted back, or I unmuted, and then somehow it remuted itself. Or it was 3 minutes. I have no idea. Whatever. We're talking too long about this now. Well, I live and learn. It was after the cough. Oh, Jesus Christ. You missed everything. Okay. How about this? If this is, I'm not sure how current this chat is. Did I read out Lena Dell hates the clocks chat? Did I do that? If I didn't do that, I'll do that again. And then I'll probably go because I'm sweating here in this hot room. I have air conditioning finally, but it's like barely working. You muted that. It's not just primaries. Okay, I'm guessing that no is to the comment. All right. Lena Dell hates the clock. And to that name, I said, I like that name. And I said, I liked Lana Del Rey's album a couple years ago. And then I read her comment saying, thank you, David. Dump the incumbents on both sides of the aisle that take big money. This starts with the primary. If we are in closed primary states, might need to temporarily re-register as D or R. So basically, I agree, minus the last sentence, there's no reason to register as a Republican. But in terms of voting, yes, primary is the most important part. Primary out the clowns. That was basically the extent of the comments there. Yeah, how hot is it right now? Oh my God. May have to turn this AC up. It's getting crazy in here. So, I think it's mostly humidity is the problem. It says feels like 33. I feel like it's a little hotter than 33. I'm not sure what that is in Fahrenheit. You're weird Fahrenheit, but I don't know. The issue here is humidity more than anything. All right. One second. All right. All right. Surface of the sun is hot. Yes, it is. Oh, you're saying surface of the sun hot. Well, it's not that hot, but frick, it's hot. It's not, UK, London burning down hot, but it is hot. All right. Anyways, anything else happening? Let me double check here. I just want to get offline, like some big news story dropped. See, look at this. I told you this was a story. I told you. Y'all didn't believe me. White House press secretary says it doesn't matter how Biden got COVID, prompting pushback from reporters. See, ultimately, I don't think it matters how he got it. But the point being, as I said at the time, her simply not saying, Karine Jean-Pierre simply not saying that Biden, that we don't know how he got it, but instead saying it doesn't matter how he got it, that implies that they know how he got it, which brings up more questions about why don't you want to tell us if you clearly know how he got it? And likely, as people mentioned in the comments, probably the Saudis. Probably. I mean, I'm not sure why else he'd be hiding it, but that seems to be the running theory. But anyways, I guess that's a story now. Chris Cuomo launched a new podcast. I saw that earlier. I saw his tweet. He put out his tweet. And I am, I both don't care, but I'm also very curious what Chris Cuomo, what he's going to do, what his podcast is going to be. Because he's always been sort of just like, I don't know, like a regular liberal, I guess, but has been at times more entertaining, more willing to have conversations that others don't. Like, he's one of the few people on CNN to actually have Cenk on, to have Anna on, though that happened like once or twice and never again. But that said, when it comes to just his own personal views and commentary, I have to imagine it's going to be fairly standard, but I guess we'll see. Bothered Boy says, keep up the excellent work and bring back the mane. The mane? You meant my big hair? No, at some point I got to cut this. Like right now, the length is okay. It's kind of like jolly, but once it gets like freaking down here or something, it becomes too tough to wash. And at that point, it's not worth it. Is it going to be like Obama's podcast? Probably. I'm not really sure what it's going to be. All right, I don't know. I don't think anything's really happening. I think I'm boring as always. What a boring day. No news. Nothing happening at all. All right. I think we're done. I'm scrolling. I'm doom scrolling here. All right. We're good. Anyways, thank you all for showing up. I'm glad you all showed up. It was a fun time. Let's do this again sometime, shall we? Oh, look at this late chat coming in. MC Dano says media needs to start talking about wet bulb temperatures and its danger. Yes, I remember that, because those conditions occurred, I believe, in Vancouver or in BC when they had their heat wave, and a lot of people died. That's essentially, from what I remember, that's like the deadly combination of, is it humidity and heat? There's like a certain number, a certain combination where if it hits some certain, combination, then it heightens the ability for people to suffer heat stroke. Where it's like, I think it's your sweat evaporates too quickly for it to cool you off. So then it sort of creates this scenario where you're just like getting warmer and warmer and warmer. In fact, I have what's called the internet. So I think I can look it up just to make sure. Wet bulb temperature is the temperature of some word I can't read. Saturation. This is the temperature indicated by a moistened thermometer bulb exposed to the airflow. Wait, what? I don't think that's what that's not what I'm talking about. Here we go. Wet bulb temperature is the lowest temperature that can be reached under current ambient conditions by the evaporation of water only. Even heat-adapted people cannot carry out normal outdoor activities past a wet bulb temperature of 32 degrees Celsius or 90 Fahrenheit, equivalent to a heat index of 55 Celsius or 130 Fahrenheit. So I'm guessing it's the combination of that temperature with the humidity that would reach that, is my understanding. And that creates a situation where basically you're effed. Here we go. We'll end on this. Some science. Wet bulb 101. Here's why you're likely unfamiliar with this term. So the UK recorded its hottest average temperature, 40 degrees Celsius, 104 Fahrenheit, and other countries in Europe are struggling through sweltering heat as well. Let's get to wet bulb. Okay. A wet bulb temperature is a measure of stress and heat. It considers both the temperature and the humidity in the air. See, I was on to something. I was almost exactly right. It's measured with a thermometer covered in a water-soaked cloth. It can also be categorized as how effectively a person can cool off by sweating. Now it's proliferating farther north due to the climate crisis. So this environmental scientist explained high wet bulb temp is even more dangerous than normal heat. The way humans cool themselves is by perspiring or sweating and evaporating. That's absolutely essential for human survival. When sweat, okay, we know that. This is why the combination of heat and humidity is a lot more dangerous than just dry heat alone. There we go. Yeah, see, humidity is what kills me. Like when it's humid, it can be like, 35, 40, and I'm going to be fine. But if it's really humid at those temperatures, then that's when I have a problem. So like I've noticed, depending where you like, Canada, Ontario is terrible for humidity. But I've been to other places. From memory, I think the West Coast is pretty good when it comes to not much. Like when I was in LA, the weather there was amazing. Like, you understand why people, stay there and don't leave, because the weather there really is incredible. Now, the cost of living and everything else, and where do I begin? Everything else there, not so great, but that's kind of America generally. A lot of poverty, a lot of roads, sidewalks that are just like torn up, haven't been fixed in years, which is really bizarre to see. But the temperature there is amazing. But basically, yeah, humidity sucks. So if it's very hot and very humid, you have to be careful. Don't go outside, stay inside. But I think I have to go now. So let me grab, was there another chat? Nope, that was MC Dano on the wet bulb. All right. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all so much. I will see you some other time. I guess tomorrow I'll have some video. Probably not a live stream, but probably something. All right. Thank you all, and see you next time. Goodbye. Bye-bye.